Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by creator Tom Richmond. Tom, we had the chance to meet at C2E2 a few months ago, and I'm so glad to reconnect with you. Thank you for joining.
Very happy to be here.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you. Is the bat suit fully functional? Do you sometimes wear this? I'm just curious.
It is. I've had it for a very long time, but I used to take my kids trick or treating in it actually.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and of course it's ready whenever the dangerous suburb of Burnsville, Minnesota, breaks out in a crime wave. I'm ready to go, but mostly it just
Nice.
sits there.
You never know. You never know. It's good to have one on hand.
Never know.
Yeah. Well, folks out there will know you for creating in the world of Mad Magazine. We'll also talk about some of the additional titles that have been part of your work and some of your media work. Uh, what initially led you to this world of authoring, arting, and creating?
Well, I can safely say Batman did actually.
Nice.
When I was a little kid, I was a huge fan of the Adam West TV show. And that led to my getting in reading comics, not just Batman, but lots of other comics, and that set off a love of drawing and never looked back. So I have to thank the Cape Crusader for that.
Nice, nice. Batman is also right there in my reading history. The Adam West show, as well as Michael Keaton, and the way that I mingled those together as a kid, I don't know how it exactly worked, but it worked out. It was fun.
Yeah, my dad used to frequent garage sales looking for Adam West era Bat toys because I was a little younger than the show. It was in syndication by the time I was old enough to enjoy it. By that time, the toys were all off the shelves and in garage sales and flea markets and stuff. So I had a lot of them, but they were gently used.
Nice, nice. What was the process like going from kind of reader and appreciator of comics to someone who creates in comics?
Well, I mean, having loved comics as a kid and drawing a lot of comics, on my own and just for fun, I wanted to be an artist, but I really didn't have much of a focus. What do I want to do in art? I wasn't sure comic books was where I wanted to go. So um, I decided I needed to go to college. So I went to art school and I was actually going to the University of Minnesota at their art program there as a freshman. And I got a job that summer drawing caricatures at a Six Flags theme park. And that was my summer job. And that was really the catalyst that set me off to doing humorous art and cartooning and caricature as a focus. So I fell in love with caricature that summer, and it's been, a primary focus of my work ever since.
Nice, nice. Now, prior to Mad, you were also involved in a title that I remember. I loved the TV show, and I also loved the art and the caricatures, and that was Married with Children. What
Oh
was it
yeah.
like working on that book and getting to do the Peggy Bundy bouffant and all of those kind of things?
Well, that was an interesting job. That was my very first job in comics, penciling that title. And Now Comics, that was the company that published it, did a lot of licensed type stuff. They did the real Ghostbusters, and they did Speed Racer, and they had a bunch of properties that they did work for. And they were looking for somebody to do this Married with Children comic, and I sent them some stuff, and I got the opportunity to do it. Uh, Columbia Pictures was the owner of the property, and so we had to run everything by them. And they were pretty okay with the caricatures I did of the guys, but I really had to be careful with drawing Peggy and Christina Applegate's character. Um, they didn't want me to make them look too silly, so I kind of did more of a cartoony version of them and a little bit more of a caricature version of Ed O'Neill and David Faustino and the other characters in the show. But it was a lot of fun to work on. They had some funny stories, and we got to do a lot more interesting things than they did in the show. The Bundys became superheroes at one point, and a few fantasy miniseries where Al falls asleep watching a science fiction marathon on TV, and then the whole book is a dream sequence of the Bundys and various spoofs of sci-fi movies and TV shows, and so it got kind of silly, but it was a lot of fun. And I can still to this day draw the Bundy living room with all the furniture in place exactly where it's supposed to be.
It's nice. You learned it well. You learned it well.
I did for sure.
Now, from there, you went to Mad Magazine, and what was that like starting there? And I believe it was around 2000 when you started. What was that place like?
Well, I was kind of lucky that I got into Mad sort of at the tail end of what I consider the classic Mad, you know. When I started with them in 2000, Nick Meglin was still one of the editors, along with John Ficarra. And Nick was one of the original Mad guys from back in the 50s. He started as a pretty young man working with Feldstein and Bill Gaines very early on in the Mad era. So he was like the heart and soul of Mad, and he was still there. So Mad was still very much Mad at that time. And when he retired, things started to change a little bit. The DC Comics people kind of started interfering with the magazine a bit, and we started doing merchandise crossovers and weird stuff like that. And kind of took some of the zap out of it. But I just feel like I kind of got in right at the tail end of the Gaines, very much the Gaines flavored era of Mad. I never met Bill. He died 10 years before I started with Mad, but it just very much was still that sensibility with Nick there. And John and those other guys did a great job carrying on the torch. Um, but those first few years were really, really special, I think.
It's hard to talk about comics history without talking about Bill Gaines and the
Yeah.
work that he did, EC Comics, and then leading into Mad. So great that you were kind of tapped into some of that era.
Yeah, and I've gotten to know his daughter Wendy pretty well. She doesn't live too far from here down in Madison, and I've done a few little commission projects for her, and gotten to hear some great stories about the old days with Bill. And of course, when I started with Mad too, a lot of the guys were still around. I got to know Mort Drucker pretty well. I got to know Al Jaffe pretty well. Um, I got to know Sergio, still around and still doing his thing. Paul Coker. I mean, some of the guys that were Angelo Torres, that were there during the real heyday of Mad when it sold like 2 million copies an issue. And so I got to hear some great stories about the good old days with Mad and how crazy Bill was and some of the things that they did. It's pretty funny stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask about some of the collaborations that have stood out the most over your career. So any there in the Mad realm or in other spaces?
Um, well, the writer that I worked the most with at Mad was a gentleman by the name of Desmond Devlin, and he started um, about 10 years before I started with him, so he'd been with him for a while. But he did a lot of the movie and TV parody spoofs when guys like Arnie Kogan and Tom Koch and a few of those other guys that did a lot of them kind of started to back off on how much volume of work they did. And Des is very funny. So he and I teamed up a lot, but I also got to work with Dick DiBartolo and Arnie Kogan and a few other writers that were. I got to do a very brief little bit on a Frank Jacobs script that he did. So as far as Mad goes, like all the writers were top notch because you didn't get published in Mad unless you were Mad worthy. So those were all great. And then I had some fun with I did a miniseries also pre-Mad for Marvel called The Coneheads,
Mhm.
and I got paired with Marie Severin to ink my work, and that was pretty awesome. I was like, wow, Marie Severin. And I remember getting the seeing the my pencils inked by her and how much better she made me look by just the great inking that she did on that book. And then she was really gracious when we were done. She got in touch with me and said she really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to do that. She just sent me all of her inked pages. So I got them all from her, and which was really great too. But that was kind of an EC connection there, right? Marie did a bunch of coloring on the early Mads, and of course her brother John was one of the original artists on the comic book one. So, um, but yeah, that stands out too. I think.
Definitely a fixture in comics history.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Now, you've also worked in film history, so I wanted to ask about the Tarantino world, which I'm sure is mad in its own right. What was it like getting to work on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and kind of tapping into that part of media?
Well, that was a really fun and interesting job. Working for Mad, kind of there it opens some doors sometimes for you, and people are looking for that vibe or that look, or they just directly want something that in this particular case they wanted a fake Mad cover from the '60s era, as part of the to show how popular Leonardo DiCaprio's character's TV show used to be. Now, in the movie, it was kind of a has been, and so that was pretty fun. In that, I also did a fake TV guide cover, but they actually contacted me because of the TV guide thing. They wanted me to do a TV guide cover, but Quentin very specifically wanted it to look like Jack Davis art.
Hmm.
And so I had to really channel Davis when I did those pieces a lot more than just my own style. I sort of like there's definitely Jack Davis feet on Leo on that cover. But when I got a chance to do it, I did talk with Quentin, and he art directed the whole thing basically. He was like, "This is what I want," he explained the scenario and how he wanted him on the cover, and uh, and so I went ahead and did what he was looking for. I added a few mad touches. I think the Eck um, little flag coming out of his gun was my gag, but part of the deal was I really because I'm a huge Tarantino fan, so I was thrilled by this. And then I said, well, I'll tell you what, because he wanted the original artwork as well, so I had to really watercolor it. Like I didn't just do a digital version. So I watercolored both of these pieces, and I said, I'd like to personally deliver these to you on set or somewhere. And he says, yeah, come on down and come on set, and you can give them to me and we'll chat. And so I got to go on the set of the movie. It was an outdoor shot night, so it was kind of later at night, and they were doing shots of the the, the cars coming down the Hollywood Hills Road. I think it was on the way back from where his character was living or something. I'm not sure what part of the movie it was, but I mean, it was just this giant zoo of trailers and people all over the place on these streets in the Hollywood Hills. And Quentin was just sitting there in a bowling shirt, and we talked about how much he loved Mad Magazine as a kid and how it kind of was part of the reason why he got into doing movies and a bunch of other things. And he was pretty down to earth. It was a lot of fun to meet him.
That's a great film too of the Tarantino world. One of my favorites.
Yeah, me too. I was thrilled it was in it. And when I've done things like that before, that props for movies or something for a movie, and you never know if it's going to make it in the movie. You know, it's like they have like for every one thing that makes it in the movie, there's probably two things that didn't that they shot or had or whatever. So I had no idea, and when I went to go see the movie, they really zoomed in on that Mad cover and kind of panned on it for like 2 or 3 seconds, and it was definitely showcased. So I was thrilled by that, and then I got a credit in the movie too. So that's a bucket list thing checked off.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've since also worked in crowdfunding, so curious about your work there, what that's opened up, and what that has been like.
Yeah, that was just kind of a thing that Desmond Devlin, the writer that I mentioned earlier, and when Mad stopped doing new material for quite a while, they we didn't do movie parodies anymore for the magazine, and we talked about it and said, we should really do a book of nothing but movie parodies in the Mad sort of style, just to do it, just to have continue to keep this kind of genre going. So we said, well, let's crowdfund it. So we crowdfunded it, and the crowdfunding we hit our goals, and we made the book. What I didn't know was how long it would take me to do all the things that weren't the artwork for the book, because I'm used to getting handed the layouts, with all the word balloons in place, and I draw and do the inking and coloring and send it in, and then they do all the production. But I had to do all the production and all the designing and all the words and the graphics and everything. So it took us a little over 2 years to finish the book. Um, it really was quite a process, but it was called Clap Trap, and
Mhm.
yeah, it came out in I guess early 2024. So it was about 2 years ago now, a little over 2 years ago. Sold out, um, but it was a fun project, and the crowdfunding experience was interesting. Having to do that part of it was not my favorite thing, um, but I think we did a pretty good job with it, even though we delivered the book about 18 months later than we were hoping. Um, but we updated people once a week, and that was kind of Dez's job because he got the scripts done early, and then I was the guy that took forever to do the art and everything. So we had a weekly update that was usually some kind of gag or joke or feature or something. And we had a few people that said, "I wish you wouldn't have finished the book because I like getting this every week." Kind of a little bonus comedy, but I think it went all right. And we're considering doing another one, to see if maybe a little bit more realistic time frame this time. But yeah, it was an interesting project.
May it be so. May it be so. I was going to ask what's next, so it sounds like that's maybe something in consideration.
Yeah, possibly. The other part that was hard for me with that was that I stay pretty busy with freelancing, and I was hoping what I could do is just work on the book, around the edges, but that proved to be very difficult and practically impossible. So at one point, I just had to finally start turning down freelance jobs and just do the book. So I was sacrificing freelance income in lieu of the income we did get from the campaign and later sales of the book. I mean, it wasn't too bad, but that as a freelancer, it physically is painful to turn down jobs. So
Yeah.
that part was a little difficult. But if we have more of a realistic time frame of how to put this thing together, I think we could do another one. So that's on the horizon, and then I keep pretty busy. I do Matt's back to doing new material. So I've been doing something for him every issue for the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 issues now, and it seems like that's an ongoing thing. So the issue that came out a couple months ago, the last issue on the stands, I did the cover. And then the issue that comes out, I think next week, is actually Mad number 600. And they're going back to the legacy numbering after having changed it when they went to Burbank. And with this issue, and I've got a 4-page parody of the TV show The Studio that I did the art for in that, a couple of other little spot illustrations for some of the other features. So, and I do a lot of work for the comedian Jeff Dunham, the ventriloquist.
Mhm.
Do a lot of work for him as merchandise and all that kind of thing. And I keep busy doing other things. So the freelance biz just keeps on rolling. And but yeah, I'd love to do another claptrap. Actually, I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like you keep busy. Are there
I do.
particular places where people should go and follow along and kind of keep up with the things?
Yeah, well, I've got a website, tomrichmond.com, but most of my interaction with interested parties is through my Substack. I've got a Substack newsletter that comes out every Wednesday, and there's a free version and a paid version, and I have a new. I do what's called a sketch of the week every week. I sketch a character of some new celebrity, and then I tell stories about you know Mad and freelancing and share what I'm doing and what's coming next and kind of talk about the state of the biz and that kind of thing. So that's probably the best place to go. You can just sign up and find out what's new with me every Wednesday.
Well, cool. Have we missed anything that you want to make sure to include before we close out?
I don't think so. It's I don't do many Comic Cons, but I'll be at San Diego Comic Con every year. I'm always there, and so if anybody wants to come up and say hi, and I'm always there for that. And I'll be at Baltimore Comic Con this year and New York Comic Con too. So I've actually got three of them. I'm doing the
Cool,
rest of the
cool.
year, and I also do caricature workshops. This is something I've been doing for about almost 10 years now. I just travel around the country and around the world actually and do these pretty small in-person classes. Um, there are only 12 students and it's a weekend event and 2 days of learning and I teach the art of caricature over the course of weekends. So people are interested in learning to do caricature from me, then you can check that out on my website and find out if I'm going to be near you. And I don't do many of them, maybe 5 or 6 a year. So it's not a lot of classes, and but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy teaching.
Well, cool. That is my day job, so the teaching bug is totally a thing. Absolutely.
Got it.
Well, many thanks for the time, the conversation, the good interaction at C2E2, and certainly glad to have you back here anytime.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Thanks for having me on.